Good morning, everyone. Happy early morning, um, and happy Thursday. My name is Alexis Gossick. I'm with the Technology Council of Central PA. Really appreciate you carving time out this morning. I know it's a busy time of year, and appreciate you being here with us this morning for our today's tech session with Alta3 Research, and specifically Stu Feeser, the founder and CEO, if I got that correct, Stu.
Sure.
Hopefully I did.
Hmm.
So if you are just joining us, if you want to go ahead and drop your introduction into the chat, since we have a short session this morning, we'll do intros via chat. If you need to do any networking or connecting with folks, please feel free to do that during today's session, but we won't do the round robin so we can make sure that Stu has plenty of time to share with us what it is that he has to share. Following today's session, I will get an email out to everybody that either registered or attended with Stu's direct contact information. So if you want to reach out to him following today's session, or something's kind of gnawing at your brain and you want to pick his brain after today's session, you'll be able to do that. We're also recording today's session, and I'll make sure to share that recording out with everyone in that follow-up email as well. So if you need to revisit anything that Stu covers during today's session, that'll be available for you. I think that's all that I have housekeeping wise. So Stu, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Take us away.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alex. Hi, I'm Stuart Feeser with Alta3 Research, and we're here to find out who Alta3 actually is and what we do. So right from our webpage, we are a training company. Specifically, we teach open source. And the reason that open source, more like it selected us than we selected it. Open source is free. It's amazingly powerful. The quality is incredible. And there is no vendor. There's no owner that's actually writing the courseware. And generally speaking, training companies don't like to develop their content. They'd much rather actually acquire that in some other fashion. So that was basically our start. And predominantly going into Kubernetes, Ansible, and Terraform. So if we just look ahead to basically the talk, which is largely going to be DevOps driven, we're sort of contrasting a hand-built server, which we call a snowflake server. And you compare that to servers that are built by hand or by automation, where the tools, Kubernetes, Ansible, Terraform, GitHub, GitLab, Jenkins, and a lot of other components that actually would comprise a DevOps built, well, software, an entire system built with that. And there's a massive difference between the two, and I'll get into that with a little bit more detail. Now, still, you may be wondering, who's Alta3 Research, right? Oh, we're a Central Pennsylvania company, and the reason you probably don't know us is that we're a training wholesaler. Yeah, you can hire us directly, of course. But generally, it's the really big training companies that hire us to do their open source training. So if you go to them and then ultimately acquire our services, it wouldn't surprise us at all that that's the way we do business. We have over 25 years experience, and I'll give you the backstory on that. But what I've found out, in order to be successful in this business, particularly in open source, we have to write all our own content. That means we have to do a ton of research, which, by the way, is part of the name. And I knew that when I started Alta3, I wanted to do research. I like that. We need really strong quality control because students hate it when the labs don't work. They really don't like that at all, or if things are wrong. We need to keep our course very current. The half-life of the stuff that we cover is like 3 months. And it just times out. I mean, it's insane, right? So we need to use CI/CD just to keep our courseware current. We employ a very strong corrective feedback loop into the pipeline, which, if you don't know what that is, I'll explain that here shortly. There is no licensing nightmare in anything we do because it's all our content. And for a lot of our customers, that's extremely refreshing because can you change this, change that, do this, do that? The answer is always yes. But probably the most shocking thing on this whole page is, just please read that. Let that sink in for a minute. Who in the world does anything for free? Well, I'll let you in a little secret. Course development doesn't pay. It's a massive amount of work. And here's the 50 cents an hour that you get to actually write the content. I learned really fast that if you're going to make a living in the training business, it's not writing the course content, it's presenting it. And you have to do a stellar job when you do so. And by the way, when you're a wholesaler, you have to be really cost conscious. And we actually check the box on all those things. We never turn our labs off once class starts. They're 24/7. So when students access our environment, it's instant on. When students join us, it's painless to come in. And just ask, we'll be happy to give you a demo if you actually want to see that stuff. And we do offer certifications on most of the courses that we offer. And quite often, customers take us up on that. So as far as the courseware that we offer in no specific order, here are the top sellers. Ansible and Terraform, which is and Kubernetes, which is definitely the cloud-based configuration. Those of you looking to migrate to the cloud, these should be one of your top studies, that's for sure. Python and Go for automation, Linux. We just added the Red Hat series 124 and 134, which actually is selling really well. The other components that you'll see in a CI/CD pipeline for source control management or for automation with Jenkins, GitHub, GitLab, Circle CI, and other things like that. Network automation, I got to tell you, the networking guys, they're behind the rest of the CI/CD pipeline. There's a lot of opportunity right there to get a whole lot better at automation. And of course, we offer a complete AI series when we go way down into the weeds on that. But I got to tell you, the way that turned out was, when I'm trying to decide how's Alta3 going to play in the CI/CD or in the AI market, are we going to actually write really good courses in AI, which we did, or are we actually going to take AI and put it under the skins of everything that we do? And I had an inkling that the latter was actually going to win, and that actually has been vindicated, that's for sure. That AI and our embracing of it has enabled us to nail a few contracts that if we had not done so, we wouldn't have been able to complete some custom work that we've done recently. That was just really cool. One, we had to write a 3-day course that covered 10 days worth of content, mind you. And we were given like a day to write it. And of course we did. Now, none of the labs worked. And we told them that. It said, look, when we write this up, here's will be the framework of everything. It'll take another 80 hours, another week to basically scrub all the stain of Chat GPT off of it and finalize it. But guys, we never would have done that without AI in just a week. That would have been months. It was wonderful. So anyhow, moving forward, one of the training partners called SUSE recently named us as Training Partner of the Year. Now, if you don't know who SUSE is, I understand that. They are basically the Red Hat of Europe. And they offer some really nice Kubernetes components, particularly Rancher. And they contacted us to put that together, and they've been incredibly happy with us. We've been working with them for several years now, and we actually won our little trophy. And you got to love the little iguana there holding that trophy. I love it. Anyhow, thanks to SUSE for that. That was wonderful. So I noticed that during these presentations, a lot of you want to hear the backstory, which is arguably the most interesting part. So modeled after one of my favorite movies, like The Sting, Robert Redford and Paul Newman, right? Well, let's just cue the music here, and I'll give you the backstory. So Alta3 Research started in '97 with a really bad boss. This guy was epically bad, right? It was just me. So I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit. I'm the son of a home builder, Stuart Feeser Jr. Some of you may live in Feeser built home, which would be interesting. But I knew that I didn't want to build homes. I'm just an engineer with a really good attitude. And I wanted to do something in the electronics field because it's 97 and computers are around and I was definitely embracing them, but I wanted to do something in that. But I promised my wife, if I'm going to break free, I'll get a contract, a really good one, and then I'll make the leap. So the start then was with American Research Group, and I wrote a course called Computer Telephone Integration. And it turned out to be the #1 highest rated course of all time for those guys. While it wasn't a massive seller, it was a product that no one really understood because you're sort of meshing computers and telephony, and usually those two twains just never meet. But my break wasn't that. The break was actually voice over IP. So in 97, nobody knew that we would be doing something like this over the internet. That no idea at all. And for me, telecom engineer with a really good attitude, this was actually a natural for me. So what you have to understand is American Research Group had 35 people attending a class, $1,000 a pop. And everybody at the end would want their money back, saying, I could learn more if I read a magazine. So I was hired to actually fix that. And I was given 2 weeks to fix this course. And I did, right? So, and the first time I taught it, there was like 40, 35. There's a lot of people in the class, I remember. And nobody wanted their money back, that's for sure. They were thrilled because I just did all the hard work and research to bring it home. American Research Group made millions on that deal, and I was their favorite kid. And from that point, it was just additional contracts and additional growth, and then other organizations that started to hire us, and we became sort of the back room for training companies, the actual content developer. So one of the big things that we do right now, which I just want to take the next 10 minutes kind of walk through, is the whole notion of DevOps. So check this out. It's way back here in 1798. Eli Whitney gets this idea of an assembly line. We've all heard this story, right? The stuff just goes down the assembly line and you get a finished product at the other end. And they had this figured out like 200 years ago. Why is it that we hand build Snowflake servers? Where is the assembly line for computer science? And that's actually what DevOps is. It's a combination of development and operations as a single thing. And back in 2014, only 16% adoption. Now it's 70%. And still there's a lot of growth. There's a massive amount of growth still needs to be done on the networking side. There's still a lot of people that want to continue to get better at this. And I'm going to show you why. In the assembly line, the idea is you plan whatever it is you're going to do, and then you write the code, then you build it, then you test it, release it. Now the operations people, so the left-hand side is the dev. Now we're into the ops. The operations people deploy it. They run the code, monitor it, send the feedback, and you just keep going around and around that loop. And the problem was prior to then, one trip around the loop could be months. No. We need to turn that to seconds. At Alta3, we have with our products or with our services, we have to because of the competitive nature of our business. So one of the first things that was learned early on is version control. So here's the idea. We write new code, v.12, and somehow it gets mixed up. And v.1, so we're testing old code with some new drivers, and of course it tanks. And said, what are we going to do about that, right? So I showed you the pipeline without version control. So here's the boss saying, this is a serious problem. You have to train your staff on source code management, which should be GitHub or GitLab. And now when we run this stuff down the chain, it turns out that we're going to successfully test the same software everywhere along the way, but it's taking too long. There's no way it should take this long. This should be in seconds that I get to the end, or at least in seconds that I find out it doesn't work, right? That what's even worse is that I go down the line, I find out it doesn't work, and 6 days is gone. Unacceptable. So the boss says, you got to automate this. If only DevOps actually got deployed this smoothly. No boss was this smart to actually think about this. They should be, but it makes for an interesting story. So whatever the case, we add automation. Python's a great way to do it. Ansible does an exceptionally good job, and Terraform as well. And we observe that in the pipeline, which now is 10 seconds a stop, and it's potentially much less than that, we see, oh, here's the CI/CD stuff going on. So the building and the testing is continuous integration, and it's sort of on the development side of things. And then the release and the deployment is on the operations side of things. And I got all the way down this pipeline really fast. Now, is it possible that it failed in test? Yeah, sure. So the object is I need to get information back to the code writer as fast as possible, say epic fail, but we're only 20 seconds into it, not 2 days, and try again. If you aren't doing it this way, that's really bad. And you need to change that stat. So when you do all of this together, you're doing the CI/CD pipeline. So the next thing coming through then is compatibilities. This is, well, let me run the automation for you. So this is where the code gets written, it goes right down the pipeline, and it tanks at the other end. And you've heard the story, I'll bet. Hey, it worked fine on my system. And the operations, yeah, but it doesn't work over here in production. Production system doesn't look like the test system. You try again. The code is broken. Ugh. So other than making the test system identical to the production system would be a really good idea. A better idea is that why don't you just use containers, the Docker stuff or Podman, as the case may be. So this enters the world of Docker built stuff and microservices. And now you'll see these little containers. So if you've never heard of that term, the idea with a container is you take the code and then basically the chunk of the operating system that supports the code, and you put all of it in a container. The standard joke is where the boss yells at the developer and said, it doesn't work. And he said, well, it worked on my system. And the boss says, well, then you're going to ship your computer then. And that's effectively what's happening. So no surprise that when we get to the end, it just works. Okay, this works so successful. Now we have hundreds of thousands of containers all over the place. How are we going to manage that? That's what Kubernetes is for. So now when we add Kubernetes, we get the same picture, except the deployments are way faster. In fact, Kubernetes can kill off a non-working container, roll back, redeploy. It's almost like cheating, right? But here's the deal. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to go get me some Kubernetes. You skip all those other steps. I'm afraid this isn't going to work out well for you, which ultimately is why I think a well-crafted training and planning environment is how to deploy this makes a lot of sense. So Kubernetes is a massive seller for us, and there's 3 parts of it. The Kubernetes application developer, so that's Kubernetes the way it looks from these guys, and then Kubernetes CK, or the CKA, Kubernetes administrator, that's more on this side. This is actually a more complex course because they basically have to know everything that these guys know, plus how to make it work. And then the security guys, if you're into pain, right, in the DevSecOps, so they just like to put this word sec, right, for security in there, right? And now I'm concerned with actually deploying secure containers that can survive a beating. So now we've got all this running, and the boss comes back again. We're taking this to the cloud, and we need 1,000 more servers configured now. And if you're clicking around, oh, it just makes my head hurt. I hate to say this. You're clicking around on AWS or Azure web pages, starting, stop doing that. The Terraform, look, see this mouse right here? This is the enemy. Don't do that. You want to automate the management of your cloud, and this is what Terraform does, and then use Ansible to actually complete the configuration. So when you add Ansible and Terraform, which is kind of right here, the deployment or the spinning up of services that are now cloud native, because if you do everything else that I've said, including the containers, you're actually deploying cloud native stuff, which is absolutely the right way to move information into the cloud. Now, I got to stop right now. If you've ever heard of this term called lift and shift, I did not teach you that right now. This is the cloud native approach that I'm going through. And I'm not doing it at the rocket science level, but I'm definitely not dumbing this down. This is the process. And if you go by this process, you're going to get extremely clean deployments into the cloud. And as the time goes on, if you decide, I'm tired of writing big checks to AWS or Google or to Azure, I think I want to bring some of this back on-prem. Doesn't matter. DevOps really doesn't care where you're deploying this. It'll deploy it just as fast on your own hardware as it would on somebody else's. But if you are going to somebody else's, that's what Terraform is really for, is launching it there. So, hey, that last release took 50 seconds. Now I want it in 5 seconds. So I have to admit, I just had to work AI into the presentation somewhere. I said, yeah, our AI model predicted you would say that. We're adding AI to our pipeline. And indeed, we have. But that just winds up better testing, better feedback, all that sort of thing. So there are a lot of other DevOps tools. I won't go into this eye chart with you right here, but I hit the big ones, but there's a lot more depth, but that's more of a one-on-one kind of conversation. So ultimately, in conclusion, here are the big players in no specific order, from Python basics, the APIs of Python, Ansible, source code, how to launch stuff on Azure or Google or something like that. That's what Terraform is for. Yeah, don't be clicking around with your mouse. You definitely want to automate that. And if you've got this far, then you would go to the holy grail of DevOps. Ultimately, it doesn't get any better, which is Kubernetes. Okay, so I believe that takes us right to the end. So I had to promise Alex that I would finish this in exactly 20 minutes. So right back to you. Let's see if we can get some questions going here, because I have to admit I'm not monitoring them. So let's see. Yeah, I don't see any questions coming in here.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in. Folks, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have feedback, we have about 6 minutes left in this session, and we have Stu's captive attention. So,
Kelly, we do. Yeah. Wow. In fact, we actually have alumni that come aboard as students. Yes, or come aboard as interns. And you know intern season is usually over the summer, but winter break is good as well. Yes, we do.
any other questions or thoughts
Well,
for Stu?
yeah, I'm thinking you could at least type in there like, "Hey, Stu, we're doing DevOps right now. We got your back on that one, man." Or even if it's like, "What in the world were you talking about there?" Either way, I would be curious from my perspective. How are you part of the 70% that's actually embracing this to some degree? Because I think there's a lot to be gained by this approach.
Well, and people's minds may be spinning too, right? You shared a lot of really great information. So people may be kind of percolating. I know that that's how I am. Sometimes it takes a little bit for things to work through. The good news is I will be sending out a follow-up email. So if you have questions or if something's kind of bouncing around, you'll be able to contact Stu. Looks like we got a comment from Kelly.
Kelly, yeah, that's actually for these things, that's common. So, and Kelly, I will point out that when I do a presentation like this, when you're doing a presentation, you know it's going to be recorded, you just hit it right straight through, because someone can grab the scrubber and go back and replay certain things. So that's why I keep a steady pace, because training is that way now. We're definitely the YouTube style generation. So we can connect, and also you would want to touch base with Tracy T. Wirtz at Alta3 and H. Fryer. Just start with me. That's fine. Do they have my contact information, Alex?
They will in just a couple minutes. I'll make sure to get
Okay.
that out to everybody.
Well, there's my email, which is real fast. If you'd want to contact me.
Fantastic. Well, Stu, thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. As I mentioned, I'll get a follow-up email out with both the recording and Stu's direct contact information. If anybody has any questions or wants to touch base with Stu, that would be fantastic. Thanks to all of you for joining us this morning for today's tech session. I did just want to throw a quick plug. We are holding a TechNet networking mixer tonight from 5 to 7, and it's at Aruga's on Route 22 in Harrisburg. So if you don't have anything going on, we would love for you to join us. Registration is open. If it's a last minute thing, show up and we'll figure out the registration there. It's no problem, but we will be there. We have about 40 folks registered to attend. We would love to see you if you have time, even if it's not for the entire 2 hours. We'll have food, we'll have drinks, and we'll have networking. Beyond that, thank you again for joining us this morning. I'll get you an email out shortly, and I hope that everybody has a great rest of the day today.
Bye, everyone.